Fake HOA VP tried to tow an active military Hummer. Public outrage exploded. My name's Mason Brooks. I'm a 30-year-old firefighter, a proud Army reservist and the guy who thought a quiet neighborhood meant no drama. Turns out I was dead wrong. The chaos all started the day after I came back from 2 weeks of active duty training. My Humvee, officially assigned government plated and authorized, was parked neatly in my own driveway. The sun was barely up when the trouble began. Across the street lived Darren Vickers, the self-proclaimed vice president of our so-called neighborhood standards. Committee translation, a fake HOA Darren made up because no one in the subdivision would elect him for anything real. He wore a tight black polo with a massive fake HOA enforcement logo across the chest, strutted around with a clipboard. Like he was General Patton reincarnated. Darren had a real problem with anything that didn't fit his suburban aesthetic. Flags too big. Violation garden gnomes. Violation. My Hummer, parked proudly with its military plates, according to him, a serious violation of community image. It didn't matter that the city had already ruled there was no HOA here. It didn't matter that the vehicle was actively deployed by the Army and legally parked. Darren saw something he didn't like, and he was determined to make it disappear. It started small, passive-aggressive notes shoved under my windshield wipers. Move abandoned military equipment immediately. Then he escalated to fake fines taped to my door, $1,000 for unauthorized vehicle storage. Each one more ridiculous than the last. I ignored them. Figured the guy would eventually get bored. I was wrong. Way wrong. Saturday morning was when it exploded. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard it, the unmistakable rumble of a tow truck outside. I sprinted to the window, and there it was, Darren Vickers, standing proudly next to a huge flatbed tow truck, giving instructions like he was some two-bit general leading a convoy. The tow operator looked uncertain, glancing at Darren, then at the Humvee, then at the crowd that was starting to form. I flew out the front door, barely remembering to grab my shoes. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice carrying down the block. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Darren turned, flashing that smug smile he wore like armor. "This vehicle is non-compliant with HOA regulations," he said loudly, making sure the gathering neighbors could hear him. "I'm executing a removal order." "There is no HOA," I yelled, coming down the driveway fast. "And that's a military vehicle. You touch it, you're committing a federal offense." The tow operator hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. But Darren stepped closer. Clipboard raised like a weapon. "I have full authority under community standards." He barked, "This isn't about you, son. It's about maintaining property values." "Property values?" I snapped. "This Humvee is under active military deployment. You so much as scratch it and you're answering to the U.S. Army." The tow truck driver paled. He muttered something under his breath and took a step back. But Darren wasn't backing down. His pride was locked in. "Move out of the way," he barked. "I gave you enough warnings." By now, half the block had gathered. Phones were out. People whispered. Some were already filming Mrs. Alvarez. The retired school principal stood on her porch shaking her head. Mr. Benton, the Vietnam vet from 2 houses over, crossed his arms. Even the Henderson kids were chanting, "Leave it alone. Leave it alone." But Darren didn't see it, or maybe he didn't care. He was committed, and he was about to learn just how bad of a mistake that was. I stepped right between Darren and the tow truck, planting myself firmly in front of the Humvee. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from fury. "You're not moving this vehicle," I said, voice low and steady. "You're going to walk away before you add interfering with active military property to your record." Darren's jaw clenched so hard I thought he might break his teeth. His clipboard trembled slightly in his hand, but he barked at the tow truck driver anyway. "Load it up. That's an order." The driver, a wiry guy with a trucker hat and a worried expression, shook his head. "Man, this ain't worth it," he muttered, backing away. "I'm not touching Army property. You're crazy." The crowd buzzed louder. Phones kept rolling. Neighbors whispered in outrage. Mr. Benton, the Vietnam vet, hobbled closer on his cane and pointed a shaky finger at Darren. "Son," he said, his voice gravelly but firm, "you lay one hand on that military vehicle and you disgrace every man and woman who's ever worn a uniform." It was like the air around us cracked. Darren sneered, turning to the crowd. "You people don't get it. This truck, this eyesore lowers property values. It scares the kids. It makes us look like a war zone. No, Mrs. Alvarez shot back. It reminds us that freedom isn't free. Someone in the crowd cheered. Another neighbor shouted, "Leave our soldiers alone." Darren's face turned an ugly shade of red. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You'll regret this. I'll have the city on you. I'll sue you all." But before he could spew another threat, sirens split the humid air. Two black and white cruisers rolled into the cul-de-sac, lights flashing. Deputy Harris, the same one who'd helped the Hendersons months ago when Darren tried something similar, climbed out of the lead car, sunglasses gleaming. He took one look at the scene, the Humvee, the tow truck, the angry crowd, the shouting Darren, and sighed heavily. "Mason," he said, nodding to me. "Darren," he added flatly. Turning to the fake HOA VP, "Step away from the vehicle." Darren tried to bluster. "This is an unauthorized abandoned truck. I was enforcing community rules." Harris held up one hand. "There is no HOA here," he said firmly. "You have no authority. You have no right to touch private property, especially federally registered military equipment." But Harris continued, ignoring him. "Attempted unauthorized towing of military property is a felony." That shut Darren up fast. The deputy turned to the tow driver, who already had his hands raised. "I had no idea, officer. He told me it was junk." "You're free to go," Harris said. "You didn't engage." The tow truck peeled off, fast tires squealing. But Darren wasn't so lucky. Harris motioned to another deputy, who approached Darren with a pair of cuffs. "You're under arrest for attempted theft, vandalism of government property, and impersonating an HOA official." The words hit like hammer blows. Neighbors erupted in applause. Phones caught every second. Someone even shouted, "About time." Darren was cuffed, red-faced and shaking, shoved gently into the back of the cruiser. As the door slammed shut behind him, a cheer went up so loud I thought it might blow the roof off the block. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Later that day, after the footage hit local news and social media, the whole thing went viral. Respector troops trended for hours. The mayor issued a public statement condemning Darren's actions. Veteran groups rallied in outrage. Even a few national outlets picked it up. Fake HOA leader tries to tow active military vehicle, gets instant karma. It was brutal. Darren lost his job at the real estate office the next day. He was evicted from his rental house a week later, charged with multiple misdemeanors and facing a federal inquiry for tampering with a deployed military asset. Meanwhile, neighbors, the same ones Darren had bullied for months, rallied together. Mr. Benton got a brand new flagpole installed. Mrs. Alvarez organized a block party for the 4th of July with the Humvee as the centerpiece. They even asked me to park it in the center of the cul-de-sac. "For all to see," Mrs. Alvarez said, smiling. And so, under fluttering flags and string lights, with kids running around and proud veterans standing tall, the neighborhood finally felt like it belonged to the people not to fear. That day I stood next to the Humvee, one hand resting on its dusty hood, and realized something simple but powerful. You don't have to fight a battle overseas to defend your home. Sometimes you just have to stand your ground and let the truth and your neighbors do the rest.